welcome to our third episode of ThinkCast. I'm Karri Bedor with BrandCast Media, and super excited to be joined today by this man, Todd Ceman. Todd Ceman is the VP Area Sales Manager for ACRA Lending. He has, his LinkedIn profile says 20 plus years experience, but I think it's longer than that because you know what, Todd? I actually did some math and I was trying to, before we came on this morning, I was trying to think to myself, like, how long have I known Todd? And I met you back in my mortgage world days. I was a fresh to the industry loan officer, and you were there. But I started when the twins were one, and they're going to be 24.
Yeah.
So, like, we've known each other for a long time.
2002, right? I think it's
Wow.
2002 or
2002.
2001. So, yeah, I haven't refreshed that. It is closer to 26 years try not to date myself too
You
much, although
you
my
might
hair
want you might just want to change it that says since
since.
2002. Let people do
Yep,
the math.
exactly. Oddly enough, I used to have hair, so that's how long I've been in this, how it's treated me, you know?
Oh my God, that is so funny. That was the wild, wild west of the mortgage world back in those days. I remember grabbing a yellow like notebook, like the yellow legal papers, and going to the county courthouses and actually looking up mortgages holders and writing down their name, writing down the date that they originated their mortgage, who they originated their mortgage with, and the address, and then going to the phone book and looking up phone numbers. Like, whew, that was a lot of work, but it
Yeah,
actually worked. It
it
like,
worked great. Yeah, I mean, it was great leads, and I think it made us better. You
yeah,
know,
I
it
agree.
made us better. We had to work harder for what we did, and there's a lot of that. And then we would go on our appointments and MapQuest everything,
Remember that?
print out MapQuest to go to visit our clients in their house. I used to love doing that, but I don't think MapQuest exists. I don't know how I'd live without
I think
my
it
Google
still
phone.
does, but I will use Google Maps like if I have like multiple stops to figure out where I'm going to, because you can actually like pull the addresses in, so it's kind of cool. But I remember I had like a Garmin and
Yeah.
had the Garmin up and someone stole it from my vehicle. I was like,
Oh
oh my
man,
gosh, those things were like hot commodities for a while.
they
But
were.
yeah, the industry though has changed so much, and it's like you go back and you think of the wild wild west of like, hey, do you think you can get me a couple like extra thousand on the appraisal? Yeah, I can bump it up.
Yep, that was a real thing, right?
It
You
was.
fax over the appraisal order and say estimated a value or what you're trying to get
What
for
you're trying to
value,
get.
and you actually put it on there. And we haven't been able to do that for 15 years already. It's when you start talking about things like that, it really dates me.
But you know
Yeah,
what's funny though is like we didn't know better at the time, right? When we were, doing, the way that lending practices have definitely, shifted. It's to protect the consumer, and there were, we didn't realize what was going to happen with those mortgages we were writing in, 2022, 2023, and they all exploded, no income, no asset, no appraisal, like one day out of bankruptcy,
yep.
100% down. It was like, it really was the wild, wild west. And we had fun though. I mean, we were all much younger and, jumping in, but it was a fun time to kind
What a
of,
great office. I mean, just think of the people we had in that office. And there's a lot of those people that are still in the business or attached to our business,
right,
which is a testament to the kind of the staff that they hired at that time.
right,
There's a lot of quality people there, and some of my best friends to this day,
right.
you and Kristen included,
Oh,
right?
I know. Well, I was telling Todd before we jumped on that my sister and I had a conversation this morning, and we were kind of talking about Todd because Todd has done something that I think a lot of us, especially us that are in Wisconsin right now, sitting in like, I think the high today is going to be like 4. We all in the back of our heads sit there and think, you know what? I want to move. I want to get the heck out of here. And Todd, you did that. You moved, but before you moved, you did some really cool things that had nothing to do with the mortgage industry. You were a 40 under 40 in Oshkosh, and you were an entrepreneur with Dublin's, and what was the other place that you had? You had
There was two Dublins, Dublin's Irish Pub in Oshkosh, and then Dublin's in West Bend, and then
okay.
the Granary also in
Greenery,
Oshkosh.
yeah, in
Yeah,
Oshkosh. Yeah, I mean, that was a I mean, you're definitely an entrepreneur and going in and making those shifts. I think you've got an amazing story because these things that just don't happen. But you had a mortgage business that you were doing, and then you also had these restaurant bars that were actually going really well for you, right? And
yeah,
all of a sudden, your lovely bride, who is one of the most brilliant marketers, award-winning marketers, right? Yeah,
it is.
she's
Yep.
award-winning, um, tells her little sweetheart that she found her dream job and, you're gonna disrupt everything that you have going there to throw it away and start over. Like, tell me a little bit about how that happened or what that was like.
It was really interesting. Jamie has always been looking for that next step, right? You always want to further your career. Most people are very interested, whether it be monetary or more responsibility, all of the above, right? And so while she was working for the university in Oshkosh, it was, um, just an opportunity to move a little bit forward. I think, they got a little complacent with her.
Sure.
Not we missed it. She loved her time there. It was an amazing, amazing opportunity. She worked for that University of Wisconsin Oshkosh for 10 years, put her heart and soul into it, and did very, very well. The award winning, she was the first marketer of the year for higher education for the University of Wisconsin Oshkosh.
Wow.
Um, at that point, in that type, she really likes higher ed. And, there's a little limited opportunity when you're talking about certain schools in the areas, specifically in Wisconsin. And, not everybody's looking for that type of a role as far as leading the marketing and looking for a little bit more responsibility. So as she was having those conversations, it seemed like they were complacent where she was at. Um, it was, opportunistic that somebody had reached out at that point from Orange County, California, Chapman University. And, she started a conversation, not knowing where it would go, just taking some of those opportunities. Some people don't even know, most people don't even know she actually had accepted a job in West Virginia at one point, probably about 5 or 6 years earlier than that, because she was at a director level and she really wanted that VP, leading a department. At which point they ended up giving her that job at Oshkosh. So we didn't move.
Sure.
Our kids were really young at that point. It would have been pretty easy. But when she started having the conversations with Chapman, it was the type of role that she really could see herself in. Um, and that it made us have those difficult conversations. What does that look like? What does it look like for our family? It wasn't easy decisions given the fact that I had to have some difficult conversations with my business partners at that point,
Sure.
um, who are the gentleman that I own Dublin's Irish Pub with, just he and I on that accord are best friends. He
Awesome.
he and I went back, through when I was at the University of Wisconsin Oshkosh and had known each other for 30 years at this point. Um, it's never fun telling your partner, hey, we have this opportunity. If it becomes an opportunity that she can take, I think we're going to jump on it because you know what, she supported me, and that was my piece. At that point I had owned Dublin's for about 10 years. Um, Jamie really supported me through that endeavor, opening up a second location and then a third location in Oshkosh. And she supported me without any issues, she jumped into the deep end of the pool with me every time. And in order to make, her happy and to progress her career where she wanted to, I needed to be open to that. And I was, the way we looked at it is, Jamie always kind of liked the bigger cities. It
Sure.
was always an opportunity. Obviously, when you're talking California in the weather, there's definitely some, as we started off the conversation, there's definitely some interest there. But the university that she had looked at was in crazy growth mode. It was a great opportunity for her to make the change. Monetarily, it made sense for us. There was moving expenses involved and things that made it a little bit easier in that case. And I can say my business partner, he supported me 100%. He understood. So having a friend that was able to do that, and then jumping in with my wife and just creating another adventure. That's what you do.
That's a huge adventure. And I think there's little lessons with, what you've talked about so far. And, it's about communicating, right? It's about having that early conversation with your business partner and saying, hey, this might happen, rather than, coming in and blindsiding and being like, peace out, we're gone,
Yep.
because it gives them some time to process too. And I think one of the hardest things for people to do is to get into business with family or friends, knowing that relationship can be damaged, through business. So, and I think good communication is huge. And obviously, you and Jamie had great communications as well. And so you had two little girls, you had businesses you needed to dissolve, and you're moving to Orange County, California.
Yep.
Was it a culture shock a little bit, like moving that far and that, like starting over that way?
It was, it was crazy interesting. You have to look and everybody, what we had heard and did a lot of research on where to live, the difference in pay for what we were doing and how much more expensive things are.
Oh,
It is significant, right? Probably even it continues to baffle me every day, the differences in cost for things out here. But it just made sense at that point. I think the hardest part was again, working with my business partner to figure that piece out. And then was it going to be worthwhile to not only further Jamie's career, right?
mhm.
But also taking the girls out of our school. At that point, my youngest was in fifth grade, my oldest was in eighth grade, moving into high school, starting high school, right?
Sure,
So, um, how are they going to react? They were hugely supportive as kids could be too. I mean, they were not excited about moving away from their friends. I mean, that was difficult for them. But we sell that we're going to be 20 minutes from Disneyland,
oh yeah,
the beach,
sure,
there's a lot of things that I think help that move along.
sure,
Um, but it just seemed to work out. Both Jamie and I flew out here just before Christmas, in 2018 and 2017, I believe it was, excuse me. And, she interviewed and things went really well and it kind of went really fast. And I
sure,
think that actually helps that piece too, because there wasn't a lot of deciding factors, right? We didn't have, 30, 45 days to make a decision. They were hiring and we needed to figure out if we wanted to pull off the Band-Aid and take it,
sure,
and do that. Part of it was that was nice is my job at the time. I was handling a lot of the West Coast sales for a company out of Fond du Lac, and that was able to translate out here, so I could keep that job. Um, it didn't end up working out. It was only 6 months because then they, given the fact of the way they did business, it just didn't translate to the West Coast fully.
sure,
So, the benefit of that was the financial epicenter of the United States. There's New York and then there's really Orange County, California.
sure,
There is a ton of companies, wholesale lenders, a lot of lenders out here. So it made it easier for me to make that transition as well because I knew there was going to be opportunity. So I think that really kind of bought into that transition a little bit more because not only were we able to, if I came out here, we were able to survive just on what Jamie was doing as a whole. Um, but I wasn't going to go to, between, I was working at that time 40, 50, 60 hours a week. I was also heavy in Kiwanis. I was also, at the restaurants, probably 20, 30 hours a week. I wasn't going to go from working 100 hours a week to nothing, so I needed to be busy. So it afforded me that opportunity.
That's awesome. Now, I'm sure that there was, the part that I think is like underestimated in, rebuilding your social circle and, being new and now you've got your kids, Jamie's got her people and how fast and smooth did that go? I mean, I'm sure it was fine because you guys are amazing, but it's got to be a little scary to be like the new kid on the block, in a place that you're just like you just don't you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah, that is definitely something that we never thought, how would that shake out? Moving across country now, if we made a decision to make a change at this point, it'd be completely different because we have so much more knowledge of what to expect and how that would be. Um, you know, Refiguring your social circles was not really something that was top of mind.
Sure.
It was we were moving away 100% away from our family. All of our family is in Wisconsin. I did have some cousins out here that were uh, very, very helpful. They gave us a car because we only have one car out here initially. And then we ended up buying one, but they gave us a car for a couple weeks. They helped us move in. They were about 2 hours away, hour to 2 hours. It's California traffic, so it's 50 miles, but it can be 2.5 hours.
Oh, for
So,
sure.
but they were close. They helped us out a ton, but that was really the only people we knew.
Sure.
So the good thing about where Jamie was is that school Chapman University just did a whole bunch of events. And with Jamie leading marketing and communications for the university, I mean, it was kind of a plug and play there.
Sure.
So we probably averaged maybe an event or two a month.
Okay.
Um, and some really amazing things. I mean, it was really awesome. Some of the things that they afforded us as far as those events. The other piece, oddly enough, was sports for the kids.
Oh, sure.
Finding for my youngest, she joined soccer out here, and it was actually different levels. I mean, where she was pretty good. She's a good athlete, so
She's really good. Don't underplay
she's an athlete.
it.
She's pretty talented. But where there was like a traveling team in Oshkosh, there was only two, right? And only one was really starting to get going, so we only really had options at one for all of Oshkosh. Well, out here, there's club teams, and they're everywhere.
Sure.
So that was a learning curve because she started off, and nobody really wanted to give her a shot, even at fifth grade, which is crazy. She was kind of nervous getting in, but she earned her spot, always earned her spot, and was able to grow. But what that allowed us to do is on the club teams, the parents were very tight knit. And so we did a lot of traveling with, weekends and soccer tournaments. So some of our best friends out here are still, in fact, we all got together, four families got together at our house on Friday night.
Sure.
And all of our girls are celebrating their first year in college this year, right?
My God.
Hopefully not too
They're
much, but
old
they're
already.
celebrating it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's crazy. But I think sports just in general are a huge social circle, not just for the kids, but for the parents. And that's probably one of the reasons that we never moved. We lived in our house for almost 20, 25 years. And it was because our kids were like, no, we like it here. We don't want to move. They like their social circles, they like their sports. And, picking up and starting over doesn't just affect you. It doesn't just affect you and your wife, but it's, the kids and their social circles too. And sports is a great way, to kind of create that connection and have a place that feels like you belong. Because that's isn't that what a community really is just a place where people feel welcomed and a place that they belong. And they
Very
love
much
you,
so.
and that's awesome.
Well, that's the interesting thing because I could tell you, if you, what do you do in summer? When you come home in Wisconsin, you keep your garage open and you're talking to all your neighbors. I mean,
Right?
it's pretty rare that you come home and just head in, close your garage, and you don't see anybody. That is actually what happens out here.
Oh,
You know,
really?
pe people pull in, they close their garage, and we have some really good neighbors, but we really don't hang out with any of our neighbors. Where in Wisconsin we did that all the time, right? I
Right.
mean, it was just common theme to do that. So you talk about the differences in culture. It was extreme, you
Sure.
know. Um, the odd thing is, obviously about a year and a half after we moved out here, and that's when COVID hit.
Oh,
So that was kind of the bigger piece. It was really interesting for us because it was we were always running when we were in Oshkosh. Jamie was highly engaged in the university. We did a lot of things for the athletics at the university there, uh, with me in the restaurants, and Jamie was highly involved in the restaurants as well with marketing and doing things for us. We were always attending events at the community level. Well, we didn't have that out here. So we just removed that piece. And it was really interesting where a lot of people, the amount of time that we got to spend with our kids that during that, probably that first 12 months during that event was really truly amazing. And it sounds horrible, but we got to go over and traffic was not heavy, right? So we would go to beaches. We would drive up to a place called Big Bear, which is a mountain that's about 2 hours from here.
nice.
We did that a lot, and we were really able to slow our lives down a little bit and enjoy each other. And that was such a big piece,
That's precious.
it was genuine. It was awesome, and it was kind of crazy how that happened. It was really serendipitous.
Yeah, I mean, you think that you're going and restarting and you're used to working at this high level, and what you got was more time with the family. And I just had posted something not too long ago on my social media, and I said, I don't necessarily remember the truck that my dad drove or like the new pair of shoes that my mom bought, but I remember moments. And, like you had that opportunity to create some of those moments in an amazing place, but slowing down just sometimes is just not on the cards for people. And that sounds like it was a gift, like a gift an unexpected gift for you guys.
It really was. I don't even know how to explain it. It was that you actually put it in a perfect way. It was an unexpected gift. We did a lot together in that time frame. And as things started to open up, because it was a little bit more closed down out here than it was
Sure.
in Wisconsin. But even so, when that happened, we were able to pick up. Both of us could work remote, so we drove back to Wisconsin for 45 days and worked from our parents' homes at that point. Um, and there was a lot more of that remote work available.
Sure.
So we had that opportunity,
That's nice.
and that's definitely something that we've experienced over even now. Jamie works fully remote at this point. And I do come into the office every day, but I would have that opportunity as well. So it's just changes.
It is changes. So when you moved out there, did they pick on you for your Wisconsin accent?
Every chance they got. Yep, every chance they got. Different words.
Right?
Yep. Why do you always draw out your vowels? Yeah. I
Yeah.
still get that quite a bit. Yep.
I believe it. I believe it. And I'm sure that they probably asked questions about cheese and we're so Midwest nice, and it sounds like, that's not, people are closing their doors. It's just it is a different, that culture is different, but it's always funny to see like what people say. Do they bring up the Packers a lot? Do people bring, yeah.
I got all Packer stuff in my office, so I get a lot of that. Um, you know, Problem is, they're all Rams fans out here, so now they're still in it, so
Well,
I can't really
I-
talk
I'm
about
a
it.
Rams fan now. I
Yep.
like after the Packers lost, I went through this like this playing cards of people that I wanted to win. So I'm a Rams fan for the rest of the year. We'll see if they go. I actually last year I went out to LA and I went out for a Canva conference and got to go to SoFi Stadium.
Hmm.
And wow, is that cool out there? Well, because you got the YouTube theater, and then there was the stadium, and the conference was between the two. So it was like there's like that little area between the two. So we got to go back and forth between the YouTube theater and SoFi Stadium. But man, was that a nice little complex over there?
Yeah, I've been there several times. I was there a couple weeks ago for a game. I've actually Zoe played in an all-star game for flag football, and she was actually on the field, so she got to play on the field for
Oh,
SoFi. So that was pretty cool. But having that so close, I mean, it really only takes it's depending again, it's all traffic, but typically it's about 35 to 45 minutes
oh,
to
that's not
get there
bad.
if you time it right. So it's an amazing place.
It is.
Love it.
Yeah, that the Rams we'll see how they do. I guess they still have Devontae Adams, which is the tie to the Packers. So that's my justification in saying go Rams. So I'm a
I
Rams fan. I don't
it's a
even
great justification. I'd get his back all day, every day. He's awesome.
He is awesome.
Yeah.
They looked good. I'm just glad they beat the Bears. Sorry, Bears.
I ran into him last year at the Hard Rock. Some buddies of mine actually came out to watch the Brewers game. They were playing the Padres, and
Okay.
so we were up at the pool at the Hard Rock there, and all of a sudden I looked down and Devontae Adams was sitting two stools down, and I'm like, "Is that Devontae Adams?" And then the woman that was sitting next to him, he's like, "Yeah, that's my son." So she starts bragging on him, and he comes over and talks to us a little bit. And I
Oh,
said, he's like, "The Packers are number one in my heart." I mean, what is he going to say to us? I don't
yeah.
really going to say, I'll never step back into that place. I said, "Well, I'll fly you back tonight if you're willing to sign with him. Let's go." And he laughed. Super
Right.
nice guy. Super nice guy.
That's awesome. So do you see like celebrity sightings all the time, or is it not as often as you would think like out there?
It's not as often as you would think. You definitely see them. We were at dinner. There's a Chapman University's in Orange, California, and so there's a place that we like to go there for dinner. Probably the first 6 months, we were sitting there having dinner, and Kennedy just has this really weird look on her face, and she's like, "That's Christopher McDonald," and I'm like, "Christopher McDonald," and I'm thinking she's like, Shooter McGavin. And sure shit. I mean, he's literally sitting right behind me, like his back was to me. So it's happened several times. At a lot of the Chapman events, they would do Chapman celebrates. So the cast of The Bold and the Beautiful were
Okay.
all there because the gentleman that directs that and produces the show is an alum of Chapman.
Okay.
So he sits on that board. So they were all there at some of the shows. So we got to meet them. But it doesn't happen as often as you think. And half the time you're really not paying attention. They could be walking right by you and you don't really know.
Right.
But
One time we were in Hollywood and we were at a crosswalk to walk over to the Jimmy Kimmel live the studio, and like it was kind of like this. We were standing there and all of a sudden it was like, well, a camera crew was walking and filming, and it was Jimmy Kimmel and Matthew Fox when like Lost was super big. And it was like, oh my God, like, like you go with expectations of, oh, I wonder if we'll see anybody in Hollywood. And then when you get there, it's like you probably wouldn't notice unless they have cameras in their face. I don't think I would have noticed that it was them, just like walking down the street. I don't know. But it's so weird when you meet someone that's famous because you feel like you know them, but they don't know you. And then you're like, oh my God, this is probably really creepy.
yeah, exactly. Jamie always tells me, don't be creepy
Don't
again.
be
You know, 'cause
creepy.
I always have to, she laughs at me all the time, still to this day. We'll walk in the grocery store, and you know as well as I do, when you're walking in the grocery store, you're probably going to see 5 to 10 people that you know, right?
Sure.
And well, oddly enough, that doesn't happen out here, but they are wearing a Packer shirt or they're wearing something Badger, and I always have to start a conversation,
Mm,
always.
yeah.
So both my kids and my wife laugh at me all the time.
That's
It is what
Jeremy.
it is.
Anytime we travel, he's always bringing usually Packers, Brewers, or the Bucks. Sometimes the Badger stuff, but it is like he wears that Packer stuff, and you find friends everywhere, like
Yep.
everywhere.
Yeah, they're all over here.
Yeah.
It's funny. I was actually we were at a soccer tournament. It was a couple of years ago, but I was talking with a buddy of mine, and then they had a gentleman comes up and he just starts talking. His daughter was on the other team that we were playing, and so we sat and shot the shit for I don't know 20, 25 minutes or whatever. And the guy ended up walking away, and my buddy's like, "Do you like his music?" And I'm like, "What are you talking about?" He's like, "Well, that's the basis from Linkin Park."
Oh,
And so I was, and so I had met him, like I didn't even know, right?
sure.
And that was probably, it's not like you really see those guys that often. And I love
Right.
Linkin Park, but you don't see the band members. You might see the front man and
Yeah.
recognize them. But I think that's why he would always come up and talk to me after games then, because I never brought that up.
Sure.
First, one, I didn't even know, right?
Right.
But people like to hear that when you treat them like just a normal person, right?
Sure.
So
Sure.
that was kind of funny. I had no idea who I was talking to.
That's hilarious.
Yeah.
That is so funny. Oh gosh. So what's the number one thing you miss from Wisconsin the most?
The people,
People?
my family, friends. It's hard pizza.
Pizza? What do you mean?
Pizza. The pizza is crap out here.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
What about
I
California
miss
pizza?
there's
Isn't that a thing? Like
right.
California Kitchen or something? Isn't that a pizza
Oh,
joint? Yeah.
yeah. In fact, Zoe worked there for a while
Oh,
too.
stop.
She was a host at the restaurant, and that they're all right. But when there's so many good places, our favorite in Appleton, so many good places in Oshkosh,
What's your
and
favorite in
the
Appleton?
Sucks Pizza,
Same. Total
uh,
hands down. Hands
hands
down.
down.
Yeah.
And then I mean West End, there's Players in Oshkosh. There's so much good pizza,
Oh.
and here we just can't really find anything good. So I do miss
Maybe you
that.
can open a pizza place. You got a restaurant experience.
I have people that ask me that all the time,
Not
and
for real.
there's no way.
You know,
No,
never
it's
would you wouldn't
so
go back to
expensive
that
out
world?
here. No, it's so expensive out here.
Sure,
You see people open and close places every 12 to 18 months.
sure.
Um, do I think I could make it work? Yeah, but again, it's inserting my life into another probably 14, 16-hour days. We just don't need to do that.
Yeah,
It's I enjoy being on this side of it.
sure. And
Yeah.
you can just visit and get your pizza take. Your waistline probably thanks you though, because the pizza's not the best for you, but
Well, there's plenty of other things that keep the waistline high up here. So yeah.
oh my God, that is so funny. So Todd, you like what are you up to now? You're in this mortgage world. There was an announcement earlier this year about a lot of what was it, $2 billion of mortgage-backed securities being purchased that is supposed to have an impact on home affordability because we're kind of in a home affordability crisis right now. Am I correct in saying that?
Yeah. Yeah.
We had the 2007, 2008 mortgage crash that was people being upside down in foreclosures. The foreclosure rate seems pretty low yet, correct? I mean,
Yeah. It's not high. Our excuse me, our company usually keeps its delinquencies pretty low, for what we do. Home affordability is horrible out here.
oh, I can
You know,
imagine.
there's so many people that travel within Orange County or LA that are realistically driving probably 45 to 50 miles, which can probably take, like I said, again, it takes anywhere from 1 to 3 hours on a road, and
Wow.
that's one way. Some people driving from the inland empire is what they call it. Um, maybe taking the train in or things like that. But what you would have for like a 2,000 square foot house in where I live, it's like anywhere from 1.5 to 1.8 million dollars.
Wow.
You go into the Inland Empire and it's like 4 to 6.
Wow.
The affordability is significant. The one thing I can tell you is I have never seen more people with money. I don't know where they make it, where it comes from.
Like in
Um,
California?
yeah,
Yeah.
look at, it homes sell.
Yeah.
We don't really see a lot of them sitting on the market for extended periods of time, especially in the Orange County area.
Sure.
People walking in with cash, buying the homes. But the problem is, I mean, the home affordability for the people that are at a median wage is it's not possible where we live. And it's even a struggle when you go into the Midwest.
Sure.
It's
It's a
truly.
struggle. It's a struggle everywhere. You've got rents, almost as much as mortgages are now. And you've got, like I look at my kids, that are, sitting there thinking about purchasing a home versus paying rent. And, like it's a tough, it's tough to look at those numbers and see, what you really have to invest. But hands down, home ownership is the fastest way to grow wealth. And, with appreciation and, mortgage rates can be refinanced, but you can't buy a house for cheaper, right? So we continuously see that trend going up, 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 with how much homes are costing. And there's never really a perfect timing in terms of market conditions, right? But, if mortgage rates continue to go up and costs continue to go up, mortgage rates can come down. You can never recoup what you actually paid for something, right? So
Exactly.
I think people that are sitting on the sidelines right now thinking, well, you know, I'm going to wait for those rates to drop. Like, okay, you just cost yourself 50 grand, you
Well,
know,
and that's the truth right there. I mean, and even more so. I mean, there's a lot more money.
right?
I've seen. I've got a lot of friends that it's interesting how they do it out here. In some cases, as people that have lived in their houses for 30, 40 years, um, and that happens everywhere. But here it's more beneficial because they hang on to that tax base. Like their taxes can only increase by so much each year.
Okay.
So people that were, when we were looking at houses when we moved out here, if it was like an $800,000 house at that point, taxes maybe were $1,600. I'm
Cool.
like, how is that even possible?
But
But
Wisconsin has high tax rates, property
yeah,
taxes, don't we?
well, but yeah, they do. But here it's because they have owned the home for that long and they can only increase. I think it's like 1.5% a year. So they've been able to hold on to their tax base, and then they can actually give that to a family member one time. So a
Okay.
lot of times they'll change ownership in that house will stay in a family for decades, right? And that's the home affordability
Right.
because they don't either they keep refinancing, pull some cash out and redo the homes.
Sure.
There's a ton of places around here, it's pretty rare that you walk into a home and it hasn't been renovated,
Sure.
because it's the availability is there. If people make that money and they've owned it for that long, they can refinance, pull that money out and revamp it. But that's what they do instead of buying new, because then they don't have to change their tax base. It's a
Sure.
little bit more affordable. If they sell their house now, they're gonna pay an exorbitant fee for the next home, right?
Well,
So
and it's my understanding that, there's a lot of people sitting in mortgages at 2, 3% ranges that are kind of shackled to their house because they almost can't afford they probably almost could not afford to buy the house that they're living in today's market. because
Very true.
if they had to go back and repurchase, that's what they're kind of looking at. So those low rates do have like a trickle effect, but at some point, I mean, life happens, right? So people look at you picked up and moved because there was an opportunity, and you're making those moves. But what are you seeing? What do you think 2026 is going to look like for, mortgages and consumers and, people out in that real estate market?
I do feel that the rates are going to come down. I think they're probably going to make a couple cuts
Sure.
as anticipated, maybe two or three cuts, quarter point, quarter point, quarter point. We've already seen a little bit of that. I said it back in not, I used to say this to people all the time, when rates were 3.5%, 4% back in 2007, or maybe even the mid to, 2016, whenever they were that low, and they kept dropping them to 2%, 2.5%. Like, hey, do you think they're going to go down? And I said, I hope not.
Right.
All you're doing is you're taking 80% of the population out of the market.
Yeah.
If people had mortgages, like you said, you really have to think if you want to upgrade, okay, now you're upgrading, you're getting rid of a 2%, 2.5% rate, going into a 6 or 7%, maybe even higher. And like you said, the affordability is not even there. So what's the benefit? You
Right.
know, Even downgrading, people would rather stay in a 3,000 square foot house because they can afford it more at 2%.
Right.
I mean, it's crazy. So I'm still on that, yes, lower them a little bit. I think that perfect route would be, between 5 and 6%,
Sure.
maybe 4.5. I just really hope that they don't fall much further than that, because all you're doing is you continue to take people out of the market for an extended period of time when you have 30-year fixed rates that low.
Right.
Um, then you got to worry about refinancing if it makes sense, if they can't control their debt load, things like that. There's still opportunities, but I see very limited refinances where they're pulling, cash out to pay off debt. I
Sure.
mean, we did that back in the day, probably 50% of the time, when rates
Well,
were.
because we were in an environment where rates were here, and then we were getting the downside of those rates. I remember when rates hit 6%, and it was like, oh my gosh,
Yeah,
like we were literally, the phone, you could stay in for lunch, and the phone would ring because
yeah,
people would want to check rates, where's the rates at? And you'd calculate, how much they were going to save, and it was worth it for them. But you're right, it's, there's not a ton of opportunity unless maybe people are accessing, their equity. And I think that's a big difference between, what's happening today versus 2007, 2008, is that there were lending parameters that were put into place to better qualify people. And now you've got people that are sitting, that have equity where, and, they didn't really have too much equity in that foreclosure crisis. Balloon notes were coming up. They weren't able to go and refinance because they were upside down because the market was shifting so bad, and that correction happened. And I think those have made a difference. But now you just are, there has to be a change on how to get more affordability out there, not just with buying, but even renting. The renting is just, it's unbelievable how expensive rent is.
yeah. No, it's rents are extremely high. Um, I wish I would have hindsight. We would have held on to the house that we sold when we moved out here. And I was, we had a couple rental properties at that point. And I just didn't want another one, because it was, managing a place from, 2,000 miles away is not easy.
Sure.
And we had somebody that would have been able to do it for us. It just was something that, I'd had a couple of issues with some of the rentals we had, and I'm like, it's just a pain in the ass, right?
Yeah.
But man, I really wish we would have done that.
Right.
There's some of the dumb decisions you make because they're snap decisions.
Right.
Again, we didn't have a lot of time to make that choice.
Sure.
I think it would have been better. So many people are doing second mortgages are hugely prevalent again, but it's interesting because, people that because they're at 2.5%, but then they have these second mortgages and they're pricing between 9.5 to 11 or 12, depending upon the scenario. You have your local credit unions and banks that do it, but something like what I do, rates are higher, so they don't even understand the blend rate. You
Sure.
know, it makes sense to actually do it all encompassed into one.
Right.
There's still benefit there, but people can't understand it because they don't want to take the choice. And a lot of people that do what we do don't even understand what a blend rate is. They don't even know how to calculate it.
Right.
Um,
Because they worry about payments, right?
yeah, yeah.
They're thinking about payments, and they're most concerned with what am I say like writing a check, but whoever writes checks anymore, right? You do? I don't
Once I write one or two checks every month.
I don't even have a checkbook. Isn't that terrible?
Don't ask me why.
I
I'm not
needed
that smart.
I don't even have a checkbook, and I needed to get a check for something on a Sunday, and I had to go do like a money order thing at Walmart because I was like I just need to get this out, and I was like I don't have a checkbook.
Crazy how things change, right?
It is crazy. So Todd, how can people get in touch with you? What's the best way?
LinkedIn's always a good spot. I'm pretty heavy on LinkedIn. It's pretty easy to find on there. Facebook, I'm
Facebook,
on there. Yep. You
Facebook?
can always email me at todd.ceman@gmail.com or acralending.com, either or. Happy to have any conversations. If people are looking at making a change and just want to hear some of the struggles, or some of the opportunities, some of the differences.
Yeah.
Um, it's always good to hear somebody that's done it. I'm always
Yeah.
willing to have that conversation.
I think for, anybody that would watch this and, they're kind of sitting on the fence thinking, I mean, me and Kristen just talked about it's cold here and I'm like, I just want out. She's like, me too. I go, it probably starts first with like finding a place to work,
That's
or
always a
like
good thing. Yeah.
a
Being
reason,
able to pay.
yeah, a reason to go. But those southern states sure seem fantastic right now. Coastal states, anything but this frigid cold. But I do like our falls and our summers with I could do without the mosquitoes, but in
Yeah.
spring
I've
is
only seen like two mosquitoes out here since I've been out here. And I'm not, that's realistic. Like I haven't seen any. It's crazy.
that is weird.
I do miss the lake there though.
Oh yeah.
Lakes are just my favorite thing to do when we come back but they are, mosquitoes so big they need co-pilots.
Oh, it's awful. Like sometimes it's hard to sit outside in the winter or in the summer because it's like, and I'm the type of person that gets bit. I have like that blood type that they love to gnaw on me. So I always laugh and said I'm gonna come in like a beekeeper costume and sit around a campfire because it's
You're just too sweet, Carrie.
I
That's what it is.
know, yeah, that's
Too
definitely what
sweet.
it is. Well, Todd, thank you so much for just chatting today. You definitely have an amazing story and an amazing family. Tell Jamie I said hello. And Next time you guys are back home, I don't know, maybe we go grab a drink or some apple
Stocks.
or something like that. So,
We'll meet
um,
you at Stocks.
yeah, stuffs. Let's do that. Let's go have
All
some
right.
stuff. But thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate your time and you're a breath of fresh air. And I told you this before, you're literally one of my favorite humans. So it's been awesome to see what you've went out and rebuilt. A lot of people talk about it, very few do it, and you did it. And you did it in a place that would feel impossible for some people to go. Oshkosh to Orange County is not, it's a culture shock and you did it and your kids are thriving and your family's thriving and that's awesome. So I'm happy for all of you. And again, thanks for sharing your story.
Of course. Thank you for having me, Carrie. Always a pleasure.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Stay tuned for next week's episode, which is going to be amazing. I have a friend who kind of like Todd picked up and moved, but she went to the other coast. She went and found a dream job at Victoria's Secret in New York City. So um, people making moves and inspiring some fun things. So thanks so much for watching, and we'll catch you again next week.